World Championships, because all of the people at the side of the road here have small portable televisions that they can watch when the riders go out for the rest of the loop, and they come up alongside the road to watch them go past live before turning their faces back to the monitor and really living the whole race live.
Taffy, a popular person with the Tifosi, although he's only won 2 races this year, he always features heavily in them. As we watch Peter Faddersijn set the pace here now, determined to get this race back up to the back wheel of this man here, and he's riding absolutely superbly is Andrea Taffy, and I'm sure being cheered all the way by his wife Gloria and his 2 children as they watch Dad on the telly.
Taffy is such a tough rider, a very strong man, always willing to attack, and it's surprising after so many attacks today that he's managed to get himself off the front, but he's not really building on the lead. If he's going to try and succeed a move like this, he should be really looking to open up a gap of 2 to 3 minutes at the moment. But you can see the Belgians have decided we're working for Van den Broek. There's a first glimpse there in about 6th position of Jan Ullrich, and not too far away also Francesco Casagrande was there.
Well, these are absolutely crucial moments now in any World Championship when you're on towards the last 2 laps. You can't afford now to not be with the move that goes. They know the move is going to come. Taffy surely doesn't dream of staying out there for the rest of this race. His best finish in the World Championships is 6th, which he did in 1996, and on that year he really could have so easily have been the win, but that indeed went to Johan Museeuw.
Chance there to see the little earpiece in the ear of Andrea Taffy. Nearly all of the teams now, all the top teams in the world, using some kind of two-way communication to get information from the team managers in the car, which I think does make it a little safer. Well, there's Wilfred Peters, and that's a shame. He's done his work for the day. He really is a tough domestique, always prepared to work for the team. He'll be going to take an early shower now, get the TV turned on in the hotel room, and just keep his fingers crossed for Van den Broek.
A strong man has done his job and hopes that Van den Broek can now finish it off. He's in that lead group. Well, the lead group, I suppose, is correct, because the one man at the front hardly constitutes a group, but there they are. As we continue on, you've got a good idea there of how long this climb is. It's some 4 kilometres and gets tougher towards the top. Pace being set here by Dave Brylants, who's actually ridden very well, but there's trouble here for Mark Wouters, Paul. It looks like he's given up.
Difficult ride for Wouters. He was at the front a few moments ago, really giving it the full energy, trying to make sure that they could pull back Andrea Taffy. But you see, each of these teams today has decided, and it's a very risky thing to do, to invest in just one man. The Germans are investing everything in Jan Ullrich. The Belgians have decided we have got only one man to ride for today, and that's Frank Van den Broek. And what's happening is the teams are starting to become isolated, and towards the end we're going to see a very small group, I think, of riders with just the big names there.
Well, they're selling their men. Peters has gone, Wouters has gone, 2 great domestiques and hard workers. They've done their bit and blown away. Now it's left to Germany to set the pace here, and Switzerland not far away either. They're still looking very strong, the Swiss.
Well, Taffy had a maximum lead of over 45 seconds, but now it's starting to come down pretty rapidly, and it's all because of the tempo being set at the front of the main field on the slopes of this climb. You can see now that they've sent up some Germans to the front, and the Belgians now starting to disappear away from the front of that pack.
We've got Zeberg right up there for Switzerland now. He's just waiting to see what happens here now. Andrea Taffy is just keeping his same speed up, but there's so much pressure going on behind. Looking down that line, there's still a lot of riders in contention for this race, and they're bringing Taffy back as a group and not as individuals, and that wasn't quite the plan for Taffy. There they all are here, and some fine pacemaking being done up the slopes here by the German rider.
Very close in attention, Switzerland, but Taffy over the summit of the climb is still holding on. He's still managing to survive despite the fact there's an incredible pace in the main field behind, and there is the main field almost on his tail at the moment. But the speed that we've come up the climb this time, Phil, I have to say, has got rid of several riders out of the back of the group.
Well, the German, Paul, I think, is Andreas Kleier, who's done a tremendous piece of pacemaking to get those riders across. He sits up there and zips up his jersey. Taffy looks over his shoulder, must wonder where on earth they came from towards the end of that climb, but they're right on him now, and he's still, you see, going to dangle out there in the vain hope that somebody might just nip across the gap.
But now what is happening is the whole of the main field is coming past Andrea Taffy, but he has put a lot of pressure onto this bunch now, and a lot of riders will be gasping for breath. And this is the moment now, if you've got a little bit left in those legs, to launch the counter-attack. But I think everybody for the moment feels pretty happy to kick back and have a little bit of a respite before we go into the final couple of laps, because that is when the big decisions are going to be made.
Well, in fact, it wasn't Andreas Klyer, it was Andreas Clouden who was the rider who did all of the work to bring back that lead group, and he's still up at the front now as they come flipping over the top. And the Lampre rider there, Sir Marco Serpellini for Italy, also in that group as well. So a good piece of work by Taffy. Has to have hurt a lot of men, that.
Another big group of riders.
What's this? Where is he now?
Taffy has decided that he's going to keep going. He's not sitting up. He's decided to go out on the attack again. This is unbelievable. This guy, I think he must be mad, because he really has got to get out there after an incredible breakaway like that. He's put the hammer down again and said, right, I'm going to do it one more time, and this time they've let him go again. Well,
he's 33 years of age now. He turned professional back in 1989, Andrea Taffy. Started slowly, but since then he's picked up something like 26 victories as a pro, but he's certainly shaped a lot of race results as well. Look, he started to open the gap again now, and the riders in this group must be feeling pretty annoyed about that.
Except the Italians riding very close to the front. They'll be happy with that, because it's taking the pressure off the Italians. Sitting very close to the front was Francesco Casagrande, and what they want Taffy to do is keep the pressure on like this, because this will in fact then take a lot of pressure off them. They won't have to do any chasing at all, and the big leaders for Italy can sit back and leave the other teams to do all of the pacemaking. But Taffy, what a great performance. He really is a star rider. When he's on form, he just wants to go out and attack, and that really is a rider from the old era of cycling, before people calculated down to the last minute second. Taffy just wants to go out there and race.
He does, and he loves to please the public. We've seen him entertain the British when he won the Rochester Grand Prix a couple of years ago, which was then a World Cup event. He's also been the national champion of Italy, which for an Italian is a very proud occasion. And he's won big races like the Tour of Lombardy and Paris-Brussels. So he knows what success is all about, but he's still not afraid to go out and make the race for somebody else. At the moment, he's doing it for the rest of the Italian squadron. There's Chan McRae down there. I think he is now the only American left in the event. I think Levi has gone off now, Levi Leipheimer. And so it's a very, very privileged group down there just now.
Interesting to note, just going down the main field there, Phil, there's an awful lot of Italians still left in this bike race. Despite the withdrawal of Davide Rebellin after that unfortunate crash to him in the early part of the event today, there is still a big number of Italians. So this is really working to their advantage, because it's putting pressure on the other teams. A lot of Germans have disappeared from that group. They've all been sacrificed today by Jan Ullrich, and I can only count about 4 German jerseys left in this group here. So already Jan Ullrich is starting to be isolated, and he's going to have to respond to a lot of attacks in the latter part of this race, which I'm sure, if we do catch back Andrea Taffy, is going to come from the Italian squad.
Yeah, he's going to have to look for the right train, Ullrich, rather than make it obvious he's got the legs, because they know his form. They saw him in the time trial a couple of days ago, but they don't know how much effort he's given away in that time trial to win the gold medal, of course, but also the way he won the Tour of Spain this year. Strong in the mountains as well. He's going to have to wait, read the race, and go with what should be a compact little group towards the end. As we're running down now towards the last 2 laps of the circuit, a little bit of word of advice here. Jean-Cyril Robin in this lead group as well, while at the front, another attack going again. Now this is Marco Velo. Always love that name when you're a cyclist. And now through the pits, not taking any food on board. This is another attack by the Azzurri.
What a great move. They really are on the attack now. They're racing on home turf. And in fact, today, for the first time as the team manager for France, is Charlie Berard, the rider who for many years rode for the Castorama team and the System U team, a great man who's looked after the French juniors and developed them for many years, and he's now moved in to replace Charlie Motte, who resigned his position as the team manager. 5 hours and 10 minutes in the saddle, and you can see, Phil, that it really is starting to crack up a lot now, and you can see a lot more presence of Italian jerseys towards the front of this bike race.
Well, there's your average speed of 40.7 kilometers an hour, so the pace is being maintained here. 5 hours and 10 minutes. We'll be just on 6 hours for the full distance. as the field now start to try and get on terms with Marco Vello, who is the time trial champion of Italy, by the way. A very good man against the watch.
Well, this is a good move here. There's a group of about 8 riders going clear and 3 Italians in that group, and I think Francesco Casagrande was just on the back. The reaction, though, coming from Michael Bogard, who's seen the danger, and the Belgian rider in there is the old Grand Master himself. I reckon Mr. Classics of the 1990s, Johan Museo.
Yeah, a brilliant bike race reader. You do a lot worse than to follow his wheel around the bike race. That's, of course, Paul, if you can keep up with him, because even though he's aging now, he can still read a bike race to absolute perfection.
And what a man. He too is one of the bike riders of the old days. He's a real tough man, ready to race in any kind of conditions, and it must have been very strange for him this year to come back to Paris-Roubaix, a race that almost cost him his life last year.
Another Italian got to the front to conjure with as well. Now Mauro Zanetti is up here too, so that's interesting, because now we're getting into some new names. This is Marco Vello. Zanetti's on his wheel. This is a big push now by the boys in blue, and in fact our motorbike only just got out on the corner first there, as we're getting quite a little selection coming forward now. This is still the Spanish guy Rubira. He's been very active today.
Spanish jerseys have been fairly active to the front of this race this afternoon, but they've not really been dominant. They've just been present, just hanging fire and letting the big teams like the Swiss and the Italians and the Belgians make the pace making. But this is a pretty good move now. 3 Italians in this leading group, and behind really the Belgians and the Dutch are going to have to respond. I did see the response coming from Michael Bogard, but I'm not sure yet whether he managed to get himself across to the leading group.
Well, the Italians are riding extremely well now. They're doing everything right at the moment. They've used their man Taffy to soften up the field, and now they're trying to make it feel worth his while for that attack by packing the men to the front and get some decisive split going. Sitting at the back here, Frank van den Broek. I really would not expect him to be at the back at this stage, Paul. He should be looking for the split now.
Well, he should be riding much closer to the front, unless he's going to take the risk of moving to the front only on the climbs. He will hope that that's where the major attacks are going to happen, but it is always a very risky thing to do, to sit at the back like this, because you can get caught up in an accident. He's already been in one crash this afternoon, and another one of the Italians is abandoning, so that is surprising. Sergio Barbero, but he was very dominant in the early part of this race, making it a tough event.
Well, they've lost a man there as he comes off, and he's going to have a little chat with the Rhine network, I think, down there as to why he's pulled out. He'll probably tell everybody he's done his job. There's a Belgian guy also, that's Mark Wouters. We saw Mark go off on the climb. He's reported into the pits now as another man, and an awful lot of riders have been coming into these pits in the last half hour. In fact, somewhere in the region of 50 riders have abandoned the race.
It's all because of the pressure on the front, and it's been very much a very heavy tempo every time we've gone up the climb of the Torricelli. You can see again the big reaction in the main field, and it's the German riders, and again it's Andreas Kloden on the front there. You said, look at that though, Van den Broek sitting there nice and comfortably, allowing everybody else to make the pace, and he's moved very quickly to the front, from the back to the front, in the period of around about 100 meters.
It's good to see too Raimundus Rumsas riding there, halfway down the field, the Lithuanian. This is a very, very select group we're seeing now, Paul, and still there's a proliferation of riders from Italy and indeed from Switzerland and from Spain and from Belgium. The big nations.
The big nations, they always fire when it comes to the World Championships, but the biggest squad with the biggest morale every time they come to the Worlds is the Italians, which is why after that group was caught, another Italian is launching himself off the front here.
Great attacking riding. This is Farazin now having a go. And they're wonderful the way they do this, where attack after attack to try and break up the race. It just shows you the quality of the riders with them, though, because attack as they may, they're still pulling an awful lot of riders along in this group behind.
Well, now the Italians have decided they've had enough of the early part of the race, had enough of the scene setting. They want to get out there now and really put the hammer down. They've had several attacks. That was a good move just recently with 3 Italian riders getting into it, but they still want to launch the attacks. They still want to get out off the front.
This looks like, I was going to say it looks like Glenn Magnussen. We don't usually see him in his Swiss colours, of course. He's about to lead the US Postal team this year for a new squad next year. Nice attack from him. It looks as though it's all coming steadily back together again. Magnussen, normally a sprinter, specialising in winning a stage, at least one, in the Tour of Italy whenever he rides it. This was the odd year out for him. Alex Zuller again has gone, and Alex is so impressive when he starts. And look at the gap he's opened this time, and of course the Italians are trying to react.
Well, they're not reacting at all. They've just sat up because they cannot follow the pace of Alex Zuller. That was a great move. He waited for the attacks to come, and as soon as they slowed down, he came right up to the back wheel of Magnussen, straight by him, and he really has got the real coup de pedal today, the real stroke of the pedal. He's flicking it over nice and easily, and he's opening himself up a very smart gap. Now, this is surprising because Alex Zuller did an awful lot of work in the early part of this race, but I reckon today he feels he's on good form. The reaction coming from France, and that looks like Jean-Cyril Robin.
Indeed it is, and some 230 kilometres now under the wheels of these survivors. And I think that's the name of the game now, because an awful lot of riders have thrown in the towel. While it's gone after Alex Zuller, Robin, and it looks as though he's going to join him on the climb. Now this, I think, is going to be one of the last attacks. The others are going to have to try and follow.
It's put a real cat amongst the pigeons. There's two Swiss riders very close to the front there, but this will be ideal for a man like Markus Berg, the sprinter on the Swiss squad, because he can sit back now and just leave the advantage to their man at the front. Jean-Cyril Robin at the front, in fact, now has made contact with Alex Zuller, and these are two very good riders, especially for this part of the course. But look at the gear that Zuller is using, a very small gear, ticking over the pedals there on the slopes of this climb, and already they're building themselves up a pretty serious move. I think the Belgians have put too much work in too soon, and they have actually disappeared from the front of this group, but it's up to the Italians to in fact come up and take the chase. There's Frank van den Broek looking very comfortable there, moving to the front for the first time. On his shoulder there, Peter van Petegem, and the reaction has come from the Italians because they are the ones who are in dominant numbers in this race now, Phil, and Marco Velo has been sent to the front for Italy to chase down the two leaders.
Well, Robin rode extremely well in the new race, the Trans-Canada race this year, which slipped onto the international calendar and before hardly anybody knew it. Attracted a lot of big names, and he also finished second overall in that event. And now he's got himself, with that form, into what could be a decisive move here. Zuller, who's been playing around with lone attacks all day, is still on the attack now, and time is running out for the others.
Alex Zuller really having a great end of the season, although his Tour of Spain was not so fantastic. He has proved that he has got himself into ideal conditions for the World Championships, which is being defended by Switzerland, as Oscar Kamenzin was the man who won this title last year, and he's still in with a very good chance of winning again this year. They're at an advantage now, 12 seconds over the group, and the group being led very much by the Italians, who certainly want to bring this race back together, because in the group they've still got Francesco Casagrande, who many think is the #1 favourite there. That was Marco Velo on the front, putting the pressure on, trying to pull it all back together, but the race now is becoming much more tactical.
And the Italians are again on the receiving end here as they try to move up. Number 96 there was Martin Pereguero, and he's a Spanish rider. There's a few Spanish riders still in this lead group here as they now decide what they're going to do. Number 8 is Felice Puttini, the Swiss rider. And number 20 there is Andre Schmil. He's probably thinking of his upcoming Tour of Lombardy and the defence of the World Cup. It would be nice to go into that race though wearing the rainbow jersey, I'm sure about that. And Laurent Brochard on the right as well, and the Italian rider there is Farazin. This is a very select group of some good names. But what can they do about this attack? This is going to be a tough climb this time up. These two are sailing up it, but all of the work being done by Zuller, at least when our cameras go there. I've not seen Robin in the lead since he hooked up with Alex Zuller.
Although I do have to say, Jean-Cyril Robin looks very comfortable there, sitting very nicely on the wheel of Alex Zuller, riding perfectly, sitting well back on the saddle, nice and powerful, keeping himself in an ideal position. He's coming to the front now as they get towards the summit of this climb, but he does look relaxed and he does look in good condition. And I have to say that race across Canada obviously did him an awful lot of good, because he's come here with good condition. He was very unlucky to lose the Trans-Canada race. In fact, it went down to the final time trial. Having led the race for an awful long time, he had to bow out because of his inability to put in a good performance at the last minute.
And we must not forget, of course, last year when he rode for US Postal, he finished 6th in the Tour de France, slipping into the result there, hardly noticed. And so Robin is a quality rider. He was when he was a junior, a world record holder as well. Now, those two riders clear. 13 seconds, hardly a winning gap yet, as they continue over the top of the climb, and the group behind are going to leave the majority of the chasing, I think, now to the Italians. They know that at some stage they will make a move. They have to make a move because this is Italy.
The Italians will not let that group go off the front. They will fight as hard as they can to try and pull it back. Still, Marco Velo is on the front. You see, there's a bit strange this, because the Italians are trying to chase down, but it's the fact that they're on the climb at the moment that they don't have 3 or 4 riders at the front trying to organize a chase. They've sent Marco Velo up there to keep the tempo high, to make sure that on the slopes of this climb, the advantage of the 2 leaders doesn't get too big. It's still hovering around the 15-second mark, and I think we'll take a few risks in the main field on the descent of the climb here to then try and pull them back into the fold. But now Robin has come to the front. He's looking very comfortable. A click of the arm there, just a swift indication to Alex Zuller, come through now. I've done my turn at the front. It's now turn for you to put the hammer down as they come up to the summit of the climb. We'll now get an indication of just what sort of damage they've done to the main field behind.
Well, this is going to be a fine circuit next time around, because they've got to get across to reach them now. Here comes the counter-attacks from the field, and this little slight rise, and of course it's the Italians who are making the move again. Falazan trying to do something about it, over the top and flip down now, long fast descent. Alex Zuller leading Jean-Cyril Robin. The clock giving us our time checks on the right, appropriately pasted by the colours of the rainbow jersey.
The main field is not very far behind at all, and there are not very many riders left in that group. Pascal Richard, I just caught a glimpse of there, was still riding. So is Mauro Gianetti. So today, in fact, the Italians and the Swiss are the ones who are there in the greatest of numbers. They've ridden the most perfect race so far, and they've managed to keep themselves high in numbers. And look at that, just 6 seconds to the chasing group. The chasing group is just 3 riders now trying to get across. There was an Italian in there who put the pressure on the last kilometre of the climb, but the main field is really not very far behind.
Well, a little bit of a break there for Zuller as he took a drink. Robin straight through on his inside. The 2 riders we expected to move soon, Jan Ulrich and Frankie van den Broek, we haven't seen up near the action at all. They're certainly in that group and they're playing vigilante, but they're not come forward. Now this is a fast express coming across here now, and Celestino is the rider for Italy. But look at this, Paul. Camazin, the defending world champion, could soon be in the frame.
Well, this is a great move by Switzerland. They're going to move this forward now. We'll have 2 Swiss riders in the leading group of 5. Now that is very good for the Swiss, and immediately Camazin goes to the front. The reason he's done that is to show Alex Zuller that he is there, and this, I think, has been the tactic of the day for Switzerland, to make the pace-making hard, make the race difficult, and then try and launch Oscar Camazin into the group. But to get into a group with a teammate gives you an extra advantage.
Well, the Swiss are riding an absolutely brilliant race. They're building up a league group here like the old Soviet Union cyclists used to do in their amateur days. And now they've got 2 riders up in this front group, including the very dangerous Oscar Camazin, no longer an unknown after what has been a very solid season for him, although he's only won a couple of races.
The team that's missed out again is the Belgians. They should have had a man go across this group, because now they are going to be obliged to chase, because they've got to try and pull it back together for the man Frank van den Broek. Also, Ulrich would have to start chasing on his own, because he's running out of teammates at the moment. A few more of the German riders have pulled out over the last lap, so he's used his team up to the maximum, and he's going to find himself having a very hard time, because these little groups that are going clear now, unless you go with every one, it's very difficult to put yourself into a winning position.
Well, 4 nations up here, and that's a lot of riders behind who will no longer be chasing. So you're right, the Germans and the Belgians and the Dutch better start thinking things out and getting it together here, because clearly this group is not happy working together. And immediately now, I think it's Camazin who may have gone off the front.
Camazin launched the attack off the front there, hoping to steal a few more seconds on the descent. This is the chance where you have of taking risks on the descent, where in the main field behind there may well not be some organisation or somebody prepared to take the risks on those corners. Looking back, there's a rider actually coming across the gap on his own there, but it's now an awful long way back to the main field.
And Alex, a bit shaky on the way down. Alex is, he's just hanging off the back of this lead group as he turns on the way down to the hairpins. It's a very tortuous descent. Camazin very happy, a smaller built bike rider, to lean on that bend and get round that corner very well indeed. There's the rider who's coming across the gap to the left, and we'll see if we can pick him out. It is in fact a Dutchman, and that's not surprising, and it could well be somebody on the Rabobank squad who's coming across that gap.
Well, they're trying to get themselves across. Rai Campion del Mundo is the message out from the spectators at the side of the road. That's the Italian television company who are bringing us these magnificent pictures here of the bike race. The Dutch obviously have seen the danger there, trying to launch somebody across the gap. But I can tell you one thing, he hasn't quite made the junction yet.
I think it's Den Bakker.
Could well be Martin Den Bakker. Difficult to see the quick glimpses we're getting as the leading group of 5 go underneath the trees on this very tricky fast descent off the slopes of the Torricelli. But it's a sensible move sending somebody across like that, because it takes responsibility away from the country once you have a man represented at the front. But look at this crowd, Phil. This is absolutely unbelievable. This is the heart of the world cycling.
Yeah, absolutely. And Perdiguero at the back here knows somebody is crossing the gap. He keeps looking over his shoulder to see what progress is like. And we're getting our bikes right through to the front again now. And we're finding Oscar Camazin is saying, I've got the rainbow jersey and I'm going to keep it for another year, because he's riding superbly now. This is Chan McRae here, gritting his teeth, and he's got himself, I think it was Taffy on his wheel, but I tell you what, Chan is looking great right now. In fact, it's Johan Museo, the Belgian, who's got on the wheel of Chan McRae. Now, Chan, I think, took a flyer from the field and they've brought him back there. But he's created a reaction which I think he probably wanted, was to try and split this field up. But just look how tenacious they are today. The gaps come and they just concertina back up again. Oh, it has thinned out, Paul. That group's just gone round the corner.
Yeah, it's very difficult looking back now to see just exactly where the main field is, and there they are. Not very many guys left in that group now, but I think the rider trying to get across to the front actually had made contact, because I just thought I saw 6 riders in that leading group now, so we may well get a chance to see just which Dutch rider it was who's got up there. And in fact, there he is, wearing number 51, the man that we thought it was, Martin Den Bakker. So that will take responsibility away from the Dutch, and as you can see, the roles have changed, and at the front of the main group now, it's a Belgian responsibility to lead the charge. 30 seconds, so that's now looking pretty serious.
It is looking serious indeed, and the Belgians with Johan Museo riding second wheel there is going to feel a little bit worried about the way it's shaping up now, because they're getting too many rides at the front. There is now the composition, and Martin Den Bakker is the man to get on board again. And it looks as though the Dutch champion is enjoying things once more. So this is an interesting move now indeed, as we're heading out for the last couple of circuits now.
This is exactly what the Swiss wanted. They wanted to get themselves into a situation where Oscar Camazin could get across to a move. I think it's an added bonus that he's got Alex Zuller there, because next time we get to the climb, what's going to happen is Alex Zuller, he'll go to the front and set a real man's pace on the climb and try and open up the gap over the main field, because he knows there'll be an organised chase behind, and he knows it'll be coming from the Belgians, because he will have worked out the fact that the Italians are going to sit back now and leave the advantage to their man in the leading break at the moment.
There's Johan Museo. He's been riding second for a while now, but he's trying to put things to rights a little bit here. Won't be easy. Peter van Petegem is the man setting the pace, and he'd probably have mixed thoughts now, chasing down Martin Den Bakker, I suppose.
It's always difficult when you go to the World Championships, but you are riding for your country, so you forget about trade teams, you forget about the guys that you race with for the rest of the year, which is why you have to take the responsibility of your own nation. That's why Van Petegem is at the front, chasing a man who for the majority of the season is his own teammate. But this, as they go through the feeding station now, is looking like a pretty serious move, especially having 2 Swiss riders in there. Camazin leading them through there, taking his food on board. Mainly at this part of the race, it will probably just be drinks, because that's the most important thing. It's difficult now to take on very much more solid food, because the race now is certainly on in earnest.
And the boys snatching their bags and bottles there perfectly. Always a dangerous preoccupation at this stage of the race.
There's not many guys left now in that main field. It certainly has been hammered down. There's Peter van Petegem on the front. Mosier in second position there. Having a look back, there was Francesco Casagrande. Now this is a dangerous move, just letting the gap go like that. In fact, Oscar Camazin has been taken off the back there by the Spanish rider, Perdiguero, and that was a silly move. That's how to get caught out.
Well, I'm not sure what was going on there. Our cameras cut back. They had spotted it in the director's truck. As we go under the banner, 5.5 hours in the saddle now, so they're still looking for a couple of laps of racing here, which will keep them going well over 6 hours. even though the speed has been in excess of 40 kilometers an hour. And we're looking at the only little group of any note or any danger left on the course now that could threaten that small group just ahead. Watch the clock as they go over the line, because that's the time gap, and this group still very much in contention. But I think it's showdown time this lap, lads, because you're going to have to make something on the climb of the Torricelli this time up.
This is the time when you've really got to make the decision. That's why you can see Peter Farazijn is moving forward as well. On the front is Museo, then Van Petegem, then Peter Farazijn. There is Van den Broek. He's got a little bandage on his nose. I'm not sure if that's one of those nose plasters to help your breathing, or if that's a subsequent to his crash earlier on, but he looked pretty comfortable there. A lot of Italians still in this group. 32 seconds now to the lead group, and now is the time when we really must see some action on the climb.
2 laps to go. Again, that little bell from the spectator, obviously near one of the microphones down on the ground, is not signalling the last lap. I should imagine it's louder to us, in fact, than it probably is to the cyclists. We're on lap 15 of 16 now, and this is the group which is trying to throw down the gauntlet. Martin Den Bakker read it well to come screaming across before the end of the lap to put a Dutchman in the breakaway. We've got 2 Swiss, a Frenchman, an Italian and a Spaniard. A lot of countries represented.
And the defending world champion wearing number 1, he's managed to get himself back into that group. A bit of consternation there between himself and the Spanish rider who let the gap go, and that's such a difficult thing to do when you've been on the bike for 5.5 hours and then close it down again. But there's a serious organised chase behind, and this time it's coming from the Belgians. They realise they've missed out. They realise they should have had a man in that leading group, and unfortunately it wasn't Johan Museo, because what a story that would be if Museo had got himself into this leading group, and we'd be looking at a second World Championships title, because he, to me, is one of the great bike riders of the 1990s, and what a way to go into the next century.
And a lot of people would have cheered with you had Museo. Well, I shouldn't write him off yet, because the race isn't decided. He still has a chance, although one feels that he'd be working for this one for Frankie Van den Broek. Who knows, as the riders continue now into the last 33 kilometres of this World Championship. Been a very difficult race for anybody to read, attack after attack of varying descriptions. The new champion of Latvia on the back there, Roman Sveinsteins, riding a quiet race now, Paul, and just sitting there, probably feels a little bit outnumbered, because he's not going to find any countrymen riding around him anymore.
Well, he's riding a sensible race too, because he doesn't have anyone left in the bike race to help him, and all he's hoping is that this bike race stays together, and if it does come down to the sprint, you better watch out for a clean pair of wheels.
Yeah.
This is the man that Belgian think can win today, Frank Van den Broek.
He never looks pained, does he? He always looks pretty cool when he rides along. He's clearly, well, he looks content with the way the race is going, but he's going to have to do something soon.
Looks pretty happy. He's leaving it all up to his teammates there. They're dedicated to just one man today. That's Frank Van den Broek, the revelation really this year. We've been waiting for Van den Broek to come through and get himself a big win, and the way he won Liège-Bastogne-Liège earlier in the season was in real Grandmaster style. He dominated the race and just rode away from it when he wanted. But these are the leading 6 at the moment, and a lot of work is being done in this leading group by the 2 Swiss riders, Alex Zuller and Oscar Kamenzind. But look at the pressure on in the back here. This is the serious chase now. This is Peter Farazijn on the front, then it's Van Petegem, then Johan Museo. They're giving every last shot. Well, look at that big group of Italians sitting back. They're pretty content with the fact that they've got their man in the front at the moment, and they'll be just hoping it comes back together so they can launch the big counter-attack. But again, look at Van den Broek here, Phil. He's moving to the back of the group. He's really taking a lot of risks riding so far back in a group like that.
I don't think he's riding a very intelligent race at all, Paul. We know he's fallen off. As far as we know, he's not injured. He came back when his team waited for him and got him back in the race. He's not been to the doctor, to our knowledge, and but he's not ridden this race like a man looking for the world title. The Belgians, and solely the Belgian team, who are trying to keep him in contention, are keeping that gap to just 24 seconds, and they're riding a brilliant race. But really, once Zuller and Kamenzind went across, I would have expected to have seen Van den Broek go across with them, and then the race would have been over.
It certainly would. Moving to the front, Peter Farazijn, a big friend of Frank Van den Broek, who rides for the same trade team, the Cofidis team from the north of France, and he now is really putting the hammer down. He slipped back down the group there. Maybe he went to have a quick word with Van den Broek just to check on how his form was coming into the final 2 laps here. Inside 30 kilometers to go now to the finish, and we're now reaching the very early slopes of the climb for the penultimate time, and this is when you really have to have the hammer. This is when you really have to go for it at the World Championships, and if you're going to make the decision, it's usually on this lap and certainly on the next.
Well, this should be interesting this time up, and the crowd know it, of course, and somebody's just gone. It looks like Alex. Alex's legs have cracked. Well, he's had a brilliant day today, and I think he's done it totally unselfish.